Hey guys, it's Kingdom Orange 2 here, and welcome back to my channel. I have waited so long to do this, but now that the first season of Monster High is finally done airing, I thought it would be fun if I compared each Monster High character throughout the 3 different generations. Now going character by character will definitely take a long time, so this series will be chunked into a couple different parts, and if your favorite ghoul is not in this video, don't freak out. I will for sure get to them at another time. Alright, so enough of my talking, let's get on with it. Okay, so the first character I'm gonna start off with is Frankie Stein. In Generation 1, Frankie Stein is the daughter of Frankenstein's monster and his wife, the Bride, who are also known as Victor and Vivica Stein. She's the de facto main character of the Monster High franchise and the new ghoul in school. At the start of the series, she's only 15 days old, and many storylines center around Frankie as she navigates brand new life experiences while making friends. And despite her young age and lack of experience, however, Frankie is seen as the voice of reason in the show, as she often brings change against any negative status quos. Now since Frankie Stein is a type of simulacrum, she is able to detach her limbs. Well, most of the time it happens accidentally, like when her leg flew off during a fear leading practice and hit Cleo de Nile in the face. Frankie is often shown removing her hand when needing to secretly get things, as her hand is shown to have a mind of its own. The bolts in Frankie's neck also conduct electricity, which can be useful but dangerous to the people around her if she's electrocuted or the polarity of her bolts are switched. Frankie Stein is known for having a multitude of different love interests in the cartoon and movies. She began dating Jackson Jekyll in Volume 2, but decided to put things on pause until he could figure out his own relationship with Holt Hyde. She's also been associated with different mansters in school like Nathan Rott and Andy. Frankie Stein is also one of the nicest ghouls in school and is a member of the fear leading squad. Just like her parents, Frankie has a knack for creating new life. Wanting to better fit in with her friends, she created Hoodooed Voodoo, a human-sized voodoo doll that was meant to be her boyfriend. She also created the Gingerbread Man, which was an assignment for Home Ec. Now in the first Monster High reboot, we meet Frankie Stein after she follows Draculaura back to her castle when she passes her power station. There she explains to Dracula that she has been living alone in her power station as her parents continued searching for places to hide in the great monster Fright Flight. Personality and power-wise, Frankie is very similar to her Generation 1 counterpart. However, in Generation 2, she is more of a quote-unquote nerd who enjoys coming up with different science experiments and somewhat takes the role that Ghoulia had in the first generation. In the Special Adventures of the Ghoul Squad Holiday Edition, Frankie wants a sister who shares her love of science and ends up creating her own she calls Olivia, even though she does end up having her own interests in photography instead. Also, before I move on, I have to point out that the creators decided to change Frankie's age from 15 days old to 115 days old, but as much as I try to guess why, I'm still not sure the reason behind choosing to do this. In Generation 3, Frankie Stein is the daughter of 2 scientists, Dr. Mary and Dr. Victor Stein. However, unlike the previous 2 generations, they are not technically the daughter of Frankenstein's monster, but instead a type of Franken-monster, which essentially is just a monster who's made up of parts. I honestly wish I could think of a better way to explain it, but just know that this Frankie has no relation of Frankenstein's monster, and that technically Frankie is just one monster from a greater species. Now, this Frankie Stein is also non-binary and uses they/them pronouns. The reason behind this is because their brain is made up of some of the smartest monsters, both male and female, who have ever lived. All of these brain parts also make Frankie talented in a variety of fields such as language and dance, and make Frankie one of the smartest students in school. I do want to quickly point out though that this fact is a bit different in the movie, where Frankie Stein claims her brain is made up of some of the most famous human scientists like Plato, Einstein, and Marie Curie. And while this Frankie does have the same electric and magnetic powers of the 2 previous Frankies, they're a bit expanded in this generation. Not only can this Frankie reattach their limbs, but Frankie is also shown to have a secret closet of bionic prosthetics that is hidden behind a bookshelf. Frankie is also able to relive memories from their deceased monster's brain. Also, the last thing I want to touch on is in this generation, Frankie Stein has romantic feelings towards Cleo de Nile. Luckily, those feelings are mutual, and Frankie and Cleo end up going to the Monster Ball together. So the next character is Draculaura. In the first generation, Draculaura is the vegan/vegetarian adopted daughter of Count Dracula. After spending many years amongst the vampire court, her father decided to flee to the New World and live amongst the more enlightened monsters, or those who didn't believe in vampire superiority over others. While Draculaura is quite old, 1600 to be exact, she does come across as the most immature and she's very prone to crying. However, she's still very bubbly, talkative, and friendly, and is a lover of gossip and fashion. Now, one thing that always bothered Draculaura was the fact that she didn't have all of her vampire powers, as she needed to perform a task worthy of a good deed, but after restoring Elizabeth as the rightful heir to the vampire court, Draculaura becomes a full-fledged vampire and was able to finally transform into a bat. Draculaura is also head over heels in love with her boyfriend, Clawdeen Wolf. Now, throughout this series, their relationship has been tested a couple times, such as when Valentine returned to Monster High, or when tensions were growing between the werewolves and vampires when Hellscream visited the school. Before Claude, Draculaura dated Heath Burns for a short time, but dumped him after realizing he was a complete jerk to her. Draculaura is also a member of the Fear Leading team, something she rejoined with Clawdeen after Frankie and Cleo desperately needed her. Now, in Generation 2, Draculaura becomes the new main character of the franchise. She, along with her father, Count Dracula, live in their castle hiding away from humans. However, after meeting Frankie, Draculaura decides she wants to create a school in which monsters of all species can come together and study. So after converting the mansion into a new school, which they name Monster High, Draculaura and her friends form the Ghoul Squad and use an artifact known as the Monster Mapalog to pick up various monsters from around the world and bring them to the school. In this generation, Draculaura is still the same talkative and girly girl, but the storyline really emphasizes her leadership abilities. She also no longer has her pet bat, Count Fabulous, and instead has a pet spider named Webby, and along with Frankie is the student co-president. In the third generation, Draculaura is the daughter of Dracula and his former wife from Taiwan, Wei Fang. While Draculaura is still a friendly ghoul, she's less enthusiastic and energetic and more confident and sarcastic. She's also shown to be a perfectionist, a straight-A student, and the student bloody president. Draculaura is also the school's fear leading captain, a position Cleo wasn't running for this year because she had other plans. Draculaura's pet, Count Fabulous, does make a return, but in this generation, he's not a century-old vampire that's been punished in a bat body, but instead a shape-shifting bat-cat hybrid thing. Now, one of the biggest differences for Draculaura in this generation is that she's a witch. And I'll be completely honest with you and say I don't understand the whole witches and vampire backstory in the second Monster High movie, but just know that witchcraft in this generation is seen as a disgusting and dangerous human trait, and that Draculaura has to initially hide this secret from everyone, but once she told them, most of her fellow monsters were completely accepting of it. Also, Draculaura and Claude aren't officially dating yet, but probably will soon. Clawdeen Wolf. In Generation 1, Clawdeen Wolf is the daughter of two werewolves. She has three known siblings, Howleen, Claude, and Claudia, and often speaks about her various other little brothers. However, the exact number of siblings was never specifically stated. Clawdeen Wolf is a fashionista and has a love for design. In fact, her designs were so good that Madame Ghostier even wanted her to become her next apprentice, even though that was really for malicious reasons. Since Clawdeen is a werewolf, she does have enhanced hearing and smelling, powers which are even stronger during a full moon. In the first reboot, we are introduced to Clawdeen in her full wolf form, an ability that is only shown in this generation. She lives amongst the moors with her mother, Harriet Wolf, and her multiple little brothers. Now, the character model they use for Clawdeen's little brothers is the exact same, and since the number varies from shot to shot, it's really hard to say how many little brothers she has in this generation. And while they never appear in the Generation 2 cartoon, dolls were made for 6 of Clawdeen's siblings: Howleen, Claude, Barker, Paula, Wereduth, and Packlin. Just like in Generation 1, Clawdeen is still a huge lover of fashion, and in the special Electrified, opens a salon where both humans and monsters can shop together. Clawdeen also seems to have something going on with another monster named Wraith, but besides a few interactions, they're never shown officially dating. In Generation 3, Clawdeen Wolf is the main character of the franchise. Now, her backstory is a bit long and completely different in both the cartoon and movies, so I'll do my best to summarize only the important parts in this video. In both the animated series and the live-action movie, Clawdeen is the daughter of a human father named Apollo and her human mother, Selena, and is able to transform from her human to werewolf form. In the movie, Selena has passed away and Clawdeen decides to go to Monster High because she feels like she would better fit in there. However, since only pure monster hearts are allowed, she must remain in her werewolf form at all times and never reveal her human side to her fellow students. at least until the end of the movie. In the cartoon, Clawdeen is a monster fangirl who is initially unaware of her werewolf side. On her 15th birthday, her father gives her her missing mother's necklace, the Moonclaw talisman, which draws her towards Monster High. She wants to desperately join but isn't allowed to because she's a human. However, once she transforms into a werewolf while fighting the Onokuma, Headmistress Bloodgood permits her to stay. Clawdeen also later finds out that she has a brother named Claude, and that her mother is still alive but trapped in the dimension of Beheem. Now, personality-wise, Clawdeen in Generation 3 is portrayed as strange, clumsy, and a bit socially awkward. She's a bit of a tomboy and a lover of various sports such as fearleading, basketball, and skateboarding. I also cannot seem to find or remember where I found out this information, but apparently in this generation, Clawdeen is also a lover of fashion design. They just never really show this in the cartoon, so maybe they'll show it in the future. Lagoona Blue. In the first generation, Lagoona Blue is the daughter of a sea monster and an ocean nymph who live near the Great Scarier Reef in Australia. Despite being a sea monster, she is able to breathe on land but is in constant need of moisturizer so that her skin doesn't completely dry out. Lagoona is known to be the nicest ghoul in school and is also the leader of Monster High's swim team. But despite being a carefree and easygoing ghoul, one major source of stress in Lagoona's life is her relationship with her boyfriend Gillington Webber. Gillington, or Gill, is a freshwater monster, and for some unknown reason, freshwater and saltwater monsters don't get along in the Monster High universe. Since Gill's parents don't fully approve of his relationship with Lagoona, it has caused a lot of drama between the two of them, with his parents even going so far to send him to an underwater boarding school so that they would break up. Despite all this though, they have remained together and Gill has met Lagoona's parents and gotten their approval. Now in the second generation, Lagoona Blue is practically the same. The only difference here is that she doesn't have a relationship with Gill and she has this cool ability to run at super speed. However, in Generation 3, Lagoona Blue is a completely different character. Instead of being from off the coast of Australia, the writers of Monster High decided to make her live in a castillo near Honduras. Now I've heard online that this change was made because a creature of the Black Lagoon, who's technically supposed to be Lagoona's father, lives in the Amazon, but from what I've looked up, the Amazon doesn't even cover Honduras, so I'm not really sure why they chose that country. Personality-wise, Generation 3 Lagoona is quite temperamental. She's very hyper and when angry or excited doesn't shy away from baring her giant piranha teeth. However, behind her intimidating exterior, Lagoona is still sweet and cares deeply for her friends. Now just like in Generation 1, Lagoona begins a relationship with Gillington Webber with the same backstory of the freshwater and saltwater monsters not getting along. But fortunately, at least for now, the relationship seems to be a lot less toxic than it was in Generation 1. Cleo de Nile. In the first generation of Monster High, Cleo de Nile is the daughter of the mummy. Around 5,800 years ago, Cleo was an Egyptian princess who was mummified along with her sister and father after her uncle took over the throne. Many centuries later, she along with her family woke up and moved to the United States of America, where they now live along their 10,000 servants and multiple Egyptian artifacts. Since Cleo is Egyptian royalty, she's the queen bee at Monster High and is also captain of the fearleading squad. Originally, Cleo was the franchise's villain, but grew closer to the ghouls when they joined the fearleading squad after everyone quit. While still conceited and sassy, Cleo deep down has a heart of gold and is a highly effective leader and organizer. Cleo de Nile is also dating Deuce Gorgon, the hottest boy in school, despite her sister and father's objection. Speaking of her sister Nephra, Cleo and Nephra rarely get along as they seem to be in constant competition with one another. Since Cleo is a mummy, she must always have one piece of burial equipment around her or she'll turn to dust. She also has the ability to charm snakes but refuses to use it on Deuce because he likes her exactly for who she is, bandages and all. In the second generation of Monster High, Cleo is rescued from her tomb and brought to the school by Draculaura and the Ghoul Squad. She has the same grandiose personality, but unlike in Generation 1, gets along with the girls from the very beginning. The writers also aged her down from being 5,842 years old to 3,357 years old, which would have been around the time Nefertiti was queen of ancient Egypt. And while her older sister Nephra does exist in the generation, she's never shown in the webisodes or TV specials. Cleo was also given dolls for 3 of her younger siblings, Farah, Lux, and Sandy. In Generation 3, Cleo de Nile initially starts out very similar to how she was in Volume 1 of the cartoon series. She dislikes Clawdeen and treats her and her friends very poorly. However, after Clawdeen rescues her from a falling gargoyle, Cleo has a change of heart, and at the end of the movie and in the sequel, Cleo and Clawdeen are shown to be good friends. Now, one big difference about Cleo in this generation are her abilities and powers. While Cleo is still an Egyptian mummy princess who has a glass-shattering scream and an endless supply of artifacts, in this generation, Cleo has even more powers. For example, Cleo now has to carry her organs in jars alongside her at all times in order to maintain her body. She can also summon the powers of ancient Egyptian gods and has an army of scarab minions she can control. However, unlike in Generation 1, Nefra isn't antagonistic to Cleo, and Cleo only slightly dislikes her older sister because she's jealous of Nefra's success. Also in Generation 3, both of Cleo's parents are still alive, who she dearly calls Mommy and Baba, which are based off the Arabic words for mom and dad. Now, one last thing I want to point out is that it seems to be implied that Cleo was actually born a mummy in this generation. We see photos of both Cleo and Nefra as mummies when they were younger, and Cleo does mention she was named after Cleopatra the 8th. So in all honesty, while I think this may have just been a sloppy writing mistake, we'll have to wait and see if Cleo's backstory is explored more in depth in the future. Deuce Gorgon. In Generation 1, Deuce Gorgon is the son of Medusa. While his father was never specifically named, Garrett Sander did state on his Instagram story that Deuce's father was a normie. Deuce is not only the hottest and most popular guy at Monster High, but also the nicest, and he's very welcoming to the new students at the school. Since he is a Gorgon, he has the ability to turn people into stone, but his effects are said to only last 24 hours and not permanently. Usually. Deuce is also a lover of cooking, and every summer travels to Greece to barbecue and visit his aunts Stino and Eurale. His cousin is Vibrine Gorgon, who later makes an appearance in Fright's camera action. Now, Deuce does appear in Generation 2, but hardly anything about him has changed. The only difference here is that he and Cleo aren't officially dating anymore and have only been seen casually flirting from time to time. He's also in a rock band with Wraith, Venus, and some other students. In Generation 3, Cleo and Deuce are no longer dating. In the movies, he broke up with Cleo over the summer after growing tired of her egocentric behavior, while in the cartoons it seems that they mutually agreed to break up and are still amicable towards each other. Also in the movies, Deuce and Clawdeen have feelings towards one another, a storyline that is totally absent in the cartoons. Now, similar to previous generations, Deuce has a love for cooking and basketball, and also still has the signature snakes on his head. However, in Generation 3, the snakes speak, and each snake has a different personality and name after the 7 deadly sins. Deuce's snakes also have a tendency to give him poor advice and suggestions, so he will often cover them with his hat to shut them up. And Deuce once again is the son of Medusa, but instead of a normie father, his other parent is a siren named Lyra. He also isn't Medusa's only child, as in Generation 3 he has 6 older sisters, 2 of which are named Stino and Eurale, just like his aunts in Generation 1. Alright, last but not least is Ghoulia Yelps. In the first generation of Monster High, Ghoulia Yelps is the daughter of the zombies. She's known to be the smartest ghoul in school and has a love for comics, video games, and learning new things. Since she is a zombie, she's unable to speak, but communicates her thoughts through a series of moans and groans that is understood by most monsters in the school. Ghoulia Yelps is also best friends with Cleo de Nile. While at times it does seem that Cleo treats Ghoulia like a personal assistant, she apologizes to Ghoulia for coming off that way, and deep down they both mutually respect and care for one another. Ghoulia also is in a relationship with Slow-Mo Mordovich, a member of the Monster High varsity chess club. Now, the creators of Monster High did say that Ghoulia was planned to be in Generation 2, but we never got to see her in any cartoon or media. However, she did appear as a 2-pack along with Cleo de Nile as an SDCC exclusive in 2017. Ghoulia does return for Generation 3 and is once again a lover of comics, video games, and now skateboarding. However, the big change about Ghoulia now is that zombies in Generation 3 no longer walk slowly and are also able to talk. And now, while no longer the smartest ghoul in school, Ghoulia is still very intelligent, but she isn't close to Cleo de Nile as she was in past generations. Alright, well that's it for part 1 of this series. I'm not exactly sure when part 2 will be out. It really depends on when the next season of the show is released and how well this video does. However, if there's any information that you think I should have included, feel free to comment it down below. Also, if you'd like, check out both my Instagram and TikTok pages. It's the same username for both, and I love meeting new people and chatting with everyone. If you liked this video today and want to see more content in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you soon. Bye!